Marcus Williams pushed his mop across the gleaming marble floor of Henderson Tech's executive wing, the swoosh of water and bleach a rhythm he'd known for 3 years now. His shoulders ached, they always did by 9 p.m., but he kept moving, kept working, because waiting at home was 7-year-old Riley, who needed new shoes, needed his medication, needed a father who showed up every single day no matter how bone-tired he felt. The building was supposed to be empty. That's how Marcus preferred it, just him, his cleaning cart, and the silence of a corporate tower after hours. But tonight, laughter spilled from the 20th floor conference room, champagne glasses clinked, and through the glass walls he could see them. Executives in tailored suits celebrating another record quarter, another round of bonuses that would buy vacation homes while Marcus calculated whether he could afford the name brand cereal this week. He didn't resent them. That wasn't Marcus's way. His mama had raised him better than that, taught him that bitterness was a poison you drank yourself. So he kept his head down, moved his mop in steady strokes, and tried to be invisible. But fate had other plans. "Hey, you there." The voice cut through his thoughts. Marcus looked up to see Chad Henderson III, yes, the CEO's nephew, yes, that Chad, stumbling toward him with a cocktail in hand and that particular glaze in his eyes that came from too much champagne and too little accountability. "We've got a situation, my man." Marcus straightened, instinctively polite. "Yes, sir. Something need cleaning." Chad laughed, a sound without warmth. Nah, we've got this piano here." He gestured dramatically toward the baby grand in the corner, brought in for the party's entertainment, and our pianist bailed. Can you believe it? $2,000 for the guy and he cancels for some family emergency. The air quotes made Marcus's jaw tighten. "You play?" A little, sir. Long time ago." The words were out before Marcus could stop them. Truth was, he'd studied at Berkeley once upon a time, before Riley's mom left, before the hospital bills, before the scholarship money dried up and real life came knocking with bills he couldn't ignore. Perfect. Chad clapped his hands, and suddenly other executives were gathering, sensing entertainment. "Come on, give us a tune." Unless, his smile turned sharp, "you're too busy mopping." The challenge hung in the air. Marcus saw it clearly. This wasn't an invitation. This was a test, maybe even a joke. Entertainment for bored rich people. Watch the janitor fail at something he probably lied about. He could see it in their faces, the anticipation of embarrassment, something to laugh about over tomorrow's lunch. Marcus looked at the piano. His fingers hadn't touched keys in 5 years. Riley's mother had sold his keyboard when she left, needed money for wherever she was running to. But some things, you don't forget. Music wasn't in his hands, it was in his blood, his bones, his heart. "Give me just a moment," Marcus said quietly. "Need to wash my hands." In the bathroom, he scrubbed away the bleach and grime, staring at his reflection. Dark circles under his eyes. Cleaning uniform with his name stitched on the pocket. 42 years old with hands that shook slightly from exhaustion. But when he closed his eyes, he could still hear it, the music his mother played every Sunday, the compositions he'd written at 2 in the morning in his college dorm, the lullabies he'd created for Riley when nightmares made the boy cry. When Marcus returned, someone had dragged the piano to the center of the room. A spotlight hit it like a stage. 20, maybe 30 people had gathered now, word spreading through the party. He caught sight of Ellen Henderson, the CEO herself, watching from the back with an expression he couldn't quite read. Marcus sat down. The bench was too low, these were fancy adjustable ones, and someone had moved it as a final joke. He didn't adjust it, just settled his fingers on the keys, felt the cool ivory, and let himself remember who he'd been before life decided to rewrite his story. He didn't play what they expected. No pop song, no crowd pleaser. Instead, his fingers found the opening notes of a piece he'd composed a lifetime ago, before Riley, before the struggles, back when he still believed the world had a place for dreamers like him. It started simple, a melody that felt like morning light through a window. But then it grew, became something more, became every missed opportunity, every sacrifice, every night he'd gone to bed hungry so Riley could eat. It became the weight of his mother's funeral that he'd paid for in installments, the sound of Riley laughing when Marcus did silly voices reading bedtime stories, the particular ache of loving someone so much you'd break your own back to keep them whole. The room went silent, not the polite silence of people waiting for something to end, but the breathless silence of people witnessing something they didn't expect, something that reached inside and grabbed hold. Marcus's eyes closed. He wasn't in that conference room anymore. He was everywhere he'd ever been, at his mother's piano bench as a child, at Berkeley playing for professors who called him gifted, at the hospital the night Riley was born holding his son for the first time and knowing nothing would ever be the same. The music poured out of him, every stored-up emotion, every swallowed sob, every moment of grace he'd found in the grinding difficulty of his life. The melody shifted, became a conversation between sorrow and hope. His left hand carried the weight of struggle while his right hand reached for something lighter, something that insisted joy could exist even in hardship. It was the sound of choosing to get up every morning. The sound of braiding Riley's hair before school even though Marcus's fingers weren't nimble with it. The sound of finding beauty in small things because the big things were too expensive to dream about. When the final note faded, Marcus's shoulders shook. He hadn't meant to cry. Hadn't meant to pour himself out like that in front of strangers. But his face was wet, and his hands trembled on the keys. The silence stretched. Then someone started clapping, Ellen Henderson, moving through the crowd toward him. She wasn't the only one with tears on her face. Chad stood frozen, his cocktail forgotten, looking like someone had just shown him something he didn't have words for. That was. Ellen's voice caught. What was that piece called? Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Don't have a name for it, ma'am. Just something I needed to say, I guess. You composed that. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Maybe she was. Yes, ma'am. Long time ago. Ellen glanced at Chad, then back to Marcus. How long have you worked here? 3 years, ma'am. Night shift custodial. And before that, Berkeley School of Music. Didn't finish. Life got complicated. Ellen nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. I think we need to talk, Marcus. Tomorrow, my office, 9 a.m. Not in your custodial capacity. Ma'am, I work nights because I've got a son. Bring him, she said simply. We'll figure it out. That conversation led to others. Within 2 weeks, Marcus was leading Henderson Tech's new community outreach program, teaching music to kids in underserved neighborhoods. The pay was triple what he'd made mopping floors. Riley got his medication, his shoes, and something more, he got to see his father doing what he loved, proof that broken dreams could be rebuilt into something different but just as beautiful. But the real change wasn't the job. It was watching Chad Henderson volunteer at the music program, helping kids who reminded him that wealth wasn't the same as worth. It was seeing dozens of employees contribute to a scholarship fund for students like Marcus had been. It was Riley's teacher pulling Marcus aside to say his son had started telling classmates that anything was possible if you didn't give up. On Marcus's last night mopping floors, he sat at that piano again. The building was empty, just how he used to like it. But this time when he played, it wasn't from a place of stored-up pain. It was gratitude, pure and simple, for the struggle that had shaped him, for the moment someone finally heard what he'd been trying to say all along, for the reminder that we're all one act of witness away from being truly seen. His fingers found the keys, and the music that emerged was a prayer, that we'd all be brave enough to show who we really are, and kind enough to recognize the extraordinary hiding inside the ordinary, waiting for someone to simply pay attention.